Welcome to the Anderson Public Library. We are excited to be partnering with the City of Anderson and its community TV station to bring you educational programming. Your Anderson Public Library hosts public programs on a monthly basis, and now will broadcast a replay of our programs on Anderson TV. You can visit our website at andersonlibrary.net and click the View All button next to Events to view our monthly calendar of activities. Today's program is entitled Social Security Explained.
So we are this evening going to talk about Social Security, and I always do like to just ask a couple questions when we start out, because I think it's interesting to just kind of see what people are familiar with, what they've heard, what they know, that sort of thing. Let me just see a show of hands. Has anybody ever heard of a strategy called a file and suspend? Can I see a show of hands? Who's heard of that? Couple? How about a restricted application? This is why we do these, because most people are not familiar with these types of strategies. And let me ask you one other quick question. Can Social Security be taxed? Who says yes? Show me hands if it can be taxed. How about it cannot be taxed? Okay. The answer is you both could be right depending on your situation. And we're going to get into all that as well. So anyway, we're going to have some fun this evening. Hopefully we're going to give you some good thoughts, some ideas, some information. Before we get started, I am a representative of SOFA. SOFA is the Society for Financial Awareness. That is a not-for-profit where we go around and we do different financial workshops. So it could cover a variety of topics. And tonight we're doing Social Security. Because of that, I promised the library that I would gather these evaluation forms. And this is not, the goal of this is not to get a bunch of information so we can hit you with mail and emails and that sort of thing, but simply so we can have an idea of how many people were here, what you liked, what you didn't like, topics you might want to hear about in the future, all those kind of things. At the bottom there's a thing that says yes or no on a complimentary appointment. If you want more information about this topic and you'd like to speak with myself or one of the people in our group, you check yes on there, we'll reach out to you, we'll set up a time. If you check no, we will not reach out to you. So this is not about gathering people's information so we can bug you. A couple things about me. I'm Brad Clark. I'm from the Fishers area. I am an advisor. I help people in all kinds of financial areas. That's what I do for a living. I am not with the Social Security Administration or any government agency. So that's not who we're representing this evening. What will we cover? Understanding the basics of Social Security. Some of the things that are going on when I ask those questions. You know, what are the different things that we can and can't do? Learn the claiming options that could potentially increase your monthly benefit. And hopefully we're going to leave you a little better prepared to make decisions as you go forward. So as we get into this, there are a lot of risks when we go into retirement. And one of the things that's very important, when we talk about Social Security maximization and income planning, it is very important to recognize that those two things, Social Security maximization and income planning, are not separate. Those are one and the same. If you want to get the most in retirement, you have to look at those two together. If you do one and then the other, you could make some mistakes that will cost you down the road. So it's very important that you look at those two things together. So when we talk about some of these risks, that's what we're looking at, is how do those things come together? How do those impact each other? So the first one there, inflation. When we talk about inflation, we're just simply talking about the fact that goods go up a little bit each year. And you guys are all familiar with inflation. You go to the grocery store, groceries are a little bit more, or clothes are a little bit more, or a gallon of gas, or whatever the case may be. My wife handles our grocery shopping, and she was just telling me recently she can't get a gallon of milk for less than $3 a gallon. Is that about what you guys are saying too? Yeah. So, I honestly don't grocery shop, but that's what she's telling us. But we see our our budget every week going up a little bit. So as we look at that in retirement, it's important to think about where we start our income may not last, or may not maintain the lifestyle for us down the road. Market risk. Market risk is very important as well to take a look at. I had a gentleman come in a few years ago. He retired sometime in the late 90s, and he had Social Security and he had an IRA that he was pulling some income from. And so things were going along, they were just fine. He hit early 2000 and the market takes a dip. So all of a sudden he says, I took a reduction in what I was streaming off that IRA. His Social Security was still intact, but his IRA he had to take less off of. Then the market starts to come back, he hits 08, 09, and he takes another reduction. And so what I'm saying is, have you guys ever heard, if you stay in the market long enough, it'll always recover. It's a buy and hold strategy. Have you guys heard that? That's okay when you're young, when you have time. When you're in retirement and you're streaming off income, you're counting on that, and all of a sudden that dips, the percentage you're taking off that asset goes up substantially, and you can run that asset out of money. So these are very important things to look at. Tax risk. Now, I'm not here to make any political statements, but I don't care what administration is in there, we're looking at a growing debt. It's been growing for quite some time. And the question is, how do we pay that debt? Well, we need more tax revenues. So there's a chance your taxes could go up in the future. They might not. I'm not here to tell you they will or they won't. I'm just telling you it's something we need to be prepared for. Long-term care. If you have not looked at long-term care costs, those are horribly expensive. So that can be devastating to you. Personal event and circumstance risk. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the fact that life happens. Things always come up. There's always something financially that comes along and is taking money away from us. When we look in terms of Social Security, if we have a couple and we have two incomes, and let's just pretend those two Social Security incomes are identical. They're probably never going to be, but let's pretend they are, and one person dies. One of those is gone. Even if one's higher or lower, you get to keep the higher one, but one of them is gone. Your income from that source may have cut in half. And then longevity risk. When I talked about the gentleman that experienced the market risk and some of the problems there, he actually said to me, he's in his late 70s, fairly healthy. He says, I am at risk of living too long. He understands the problem. So, these are real issues that we need to take a look at. Living longer. If we take a look at this chart here, and I know you probably can't read this, it's a little blurry, but this is starting at age 65 and looking at how long people tend to live. So the top one is males age 65 have a 50% chance of living to age 89. 50% chance, 25% chance of living to age 94. Females, age 65, 50% chance of living to age 90, 25% chance to 98. Take a look at this, couples. One of you has a 50% chance of living to 94 years old. So the point is, we are living much longer. As we start to make these decisions on how we're going to take our benefits and what we're going to do, it's important to think about, what are you going to do if you're 80, 85 years old, 90? That could be important because you might make a decision today that seems like a good idea, and down the road, it's very costly. So, what does living longer mean? Your money may need to last much longer. It's important to have a solid income plan. And the timing of election of your Social Security benefits can be very, very important. This can have a huge impact on you. Understanding the basics. What is Social Security? What's the history of it? How do I qualify? When can I collect? Is it taxed? We asked this question earlier. Is it taxed? Is it not taxed? We'll take a look at all this. So what is Social Security? Social Security is a program of old age unemployment, health, disability, and survivors insurance, U.S. federal government program, funded through payments of specific employers and employees. Most of you, somewhere along the way, I'm sure have had withdrawals out of your paycheck to cover Social Security. Signed into law in 1935, designed to pay people an income in retirement. The first taxes were collected in 1937. Now, this fourth bullet point is important, and I want everyone to really understand what's happening here. 1983, an amendment included a provision to increase FRA, that's your full retirement age, for those born in 1938 or later. Why do I say that's important? It's important because they've already made some changes. That's not the only change. There's a chance there might be more changes down the road. The solvency of Social Security. This comes up all the time. I hear this question all the time. And when I'm talking with younger folks, I'll hear them say, oh, it won't even be there, by the time I get there. Let me just ask you guys a quick question. Do you think for the 35-year-olds right now that are working, Social Security is going to be there? Show me hands if you think it's going to be there. Show me hands if you don't think it'll be there. So most of the room would suggest it might not be there. Here's what I would say. It is political suicide for anyone to eliminate it. So it's probably going to be tough to make it go away. But what are we looking at? Well, if we look at the Social Security report, according to the 2013 report, assuming no future changes, okay? So this is assuming things go just the way they're going today. It is fully funded to 2033. So at 2033, there's a problem. Thereafter, tax revenue would be sufficient to pay 77 cents on the dollar until 2087, when it would drop to 72 cents on the dollar. So if they do nothing with it, it's not likely to go away, it's likely to reduce. That's really what we're looking at. So what are the possible solutions? Reduce benefits, we just talked about that. Increase the payroll tax, that's certainly an option. Increase or eliminate earnings cutoff. I believe this year it's 117,000, meaning once you cross that point, you're not contributing any longer. The last report I saw, I believe, said if you take it up to 300,000, that should take care of the problem. So that would be one possibility. They could do means testing for benefits or increase retirement age, which has already happened. There's a good chance that one could come up again. Full retirement age chart. So depending on when you were born, you can see when those benefits would start. And like I say, there's probably a good chance we're going to see this number start moving out. So we'll see. I have no idea. How do I qualify for benefits? If you were born in 1929 or later, you need to have worked at least 10 years. In 2014, each $1,200 in earnings equals 1 credit. You can earn a maximum of 4 credits per year. In 2014, it took $4,800 to earn 4 credits. And your Social Security benefits will be based on your 35 highest earning years. So if you didn't work 35 years, they're going to look at that time and you're going to get a bunch of zeros in there. But then the years that you've worked, as long as you've crossed the 10-year mark there, the years that you have worked, you'll get those put in, and then it'll be factored with a bunch of zeros, and they'll come up with a number, and that'll be your benefit. Finally, for full retirement benefits, you must be at least 66 or 67, depending on when you were born. Early and late benefit comparison chart. Now, this is probably the one that I hear people talk about the most. When they say, I'm thinking about doing some Social Security planning, they think in terms of, should I take it at 62? Should I take it at 66 or 70? Or when should I take it versus when does my spouse take it? And let me ask you just real quickly, everybody in the room, has everybody in the room looked at this chart in terms of what they're thinking about doing? This is the most common. 66, we get 100%. 62, we get 75%. If you wait past 66, it will go up about 8% a year. I say about 8, you're noticing that it's actually moving 8, but it's not truly 8 because it's not compounding, so that's why I say that. It's 8% in the first year and then it's slightly less after that. But it's about 8% per year. And here's what I'm saying is when we look at this, this is important to know, and for some people, this is the only planning that can be done. For a lot of people, though, there's a lot more planning than this. This is just one small piece of it. So, will Social Security be taxed? We asked earlier. If you are single and you earn below $25,000 a year, this is your modified adjusted gross. This is all earnings. This is if you're working, you're taking money off of a qualified plan, an IRA, a 401k, anything like that. This even includes the interest on your tax-free municipal bonds. So if you're holding tax-free municipal bonds, understand it goes into this calculation. Below $25,000, Social Security is tax-free. $25,000 to $34,000, this for a single person, up to 50%. What does that mean? That means when you're at $25,000 and you earn one more dollar, they grab $1 Social Security and 50% of that dollar becomes taxable at whatever tax bracket you're in. Okay? So it's not a 50% tax. It's 50% of that dollar is taxed. If you earn more than $34,000, up to 85% of that benefit may be taxed. Same thing. Once we go $1 past, that dollar becomes 85% of that Social Security dollar becomes taxable. In order for the whole thing to be 85%, you would have to earn $68,000. Married couple, below $32,000, tax-free. From $32,000 to $44,000, we hit that 50% mark. And then at $44,000, the government said that you are so wealthy as a couple that 85% of that could be taxable. And one other little side note on this. When your Social Security was taken out of your paycheck, was that taken out tax-free? Yes? No? It was not. So this is actually a double taxation. You pay tax on it on the front end, you're paying tax on the back end. Various claiming strategies. Did I see a hand go up?
Yes. The question is, so if I'm earning $40,000, my wife and I are earning $40,000, so 50% of that is taxable. So let's say I'm earning 40, so 20%, $20,000 would be taxable, but that's still taxable at the normal rate, like 20% or whatever.
That is correct. Whatever your tax bracket is.
Right.
Yep. Yep. It's not an 85% tax or a 50% tax. It's of that dollar, 50 cents of it is taxed at whatever your bracket is.
Right.
Yep.
So your tax still should be a lot lower because right now, while I'm working, I'm just paying whatever my tax bracket is. I'm paying right on that. So
Yeah, it would be less than standard earnings.
Right.
Yep. Yep. Various claiming strategies. So this is where we're going to start to take a look at what are some of the different strategies out there. What are some of these things that, I don't know if you guys have ever heard these commercials, you know, if you do this right, it could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars. That is actually true. If you do, and you're gonna see this here in a second. We're going to take a look at a couple examples. So, which strategy is right for you? Now, before we get into this, I want to be real clear that we're not suggesting that any one strategy is the way to go. This has everything to do with your age, what are the amounts of those benefits, and are we married, are we single, are we divorced? There's so many things that play into this. But the key is, most people in the room were not familiar with file and suspend, file restricted, some of these other things that we can do. And so that's what I really want to familiarize you with tonight. Okay, so the first one, file and suspend. We file for benefits so the spouse or dependent children can collect benefits based on our earnings. We immediately suspend our own benefits and delay them until they are worth more at an older age. We must be full retirement age. This is not going to happen at 62 or 63. We're going to need to be probably 66. Older workers with dependent minor children can take advantage of this. So let's take a peek at what this looks like. Because I know I read through that kind of quick. It was probably doesn't make a lot of sense yet. We've got John and Jane, age 66. Okay? We've got John's benefit is $2,400 a month. So John goes in and he says, I'm going to file and suspend. This is John basically saying, I don't want my benefit at 66. I want it to hold off until I'm 70 years old because it'll be greater than it is at 66. That's really all he's saying. When he goes in and files and suspends, he really is not doing anything to his benefit. It's like he never walked into the office, okay? So if he never goes in, the benefit at 70 is the same as if he files and suspends. So the question is, why would he do it? Because Jane at 66 says, I want my benefit. And my benefit's only $1,000 a month. So if John says, that's fine, Jane, you can have yours, it's $1,000 a month, I'm going to wait till I'm 70 so it'll be more, that's it. The family will see $1,000 come from Social Security. But because he filed and suspended, Jane also picks up an additional $200, getting her up to half of his benefit. So John, if he just waits till 70 and never goes in, she gets $1,000. Because he filed and suspended, she gets $1,200. Restricted application. This is similar, but there's a little twist on this. So at full retirement age, we have the option to restrict an application to exclude benefits. Okay, so we're saying we have the option to take more benefits, but we don't want them all. If you're eligible for both spousal benefits and your own benefits, you can choose to file for just one or the other by applying for benefits based on the spouse's record and delaying your own to get 50% of the spouse's benefit and continue to earn delayed credits of 8% up to age 70. Let's look at the example. So, John could file a restricted application and collect half of Jane's benefit. So, in the first example, John said, I get $2,400, but I want to wait till I'm 70 years old because I want the maximum benefit. I don't want to collect it now. I want a maximum benefit later. When he files a restricted application, he's saying, I want to wait till I'm 70 years old and get this maximum benefit. I do not want this reduced benefit. I want the bigger benefit. But because he did restricted, remember he had the option to take two benefits. One was a spousal benefit, the other one was his. He said, I don't want mine, I want to let it grow. I'm going to collect the spousal benefit. So John collects $500 per month for 4 years in this example. Jane would collect $1,000 a month, and together they're now at $1,500. So, first example, John does nothing, Jane gets 1,000. John files and suspends, Jane gets 1,200. Now we go restricted. John picks up 500, she picks up 1,000. She's not catching a portion of his. They get 1,500. So we went from 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,500.
So
Uh-huh.
you're saying that he could not do both file and suspend and file a restricted application at the same time?
That is correct. He cannot do both, but they can. And that's where it gets real interesting. So we're going to look at that next. So what about a combination? John could file and suspend, giving him an 8% increase so that at age 70 he would collect $33.62. Okay? Again, that's like he never went in as far as what his benefit did. He went from $2,400 to the $33.62. In every example, that would happen. Jane could file a restricted. So John filed and suspended. Jane files a restricted and collects $1,200 per month for 4 years, then switches to her own benefit. So what's the difference between this and the original file and suspend where she was getting the $1,200? Because that's all the family's getting right now is the $1,200. We started out, we took them up to $1,200. We showed them how to go to $1,500. Now we're showing them how to go back down to $1,200. So why would we do this? Why this strategy over the original $1,200? With the original $1,200, we were using 1,000 of her benefit and 200 of his. In this case, we're strictly using what she can grab off of his. His is continuing to grow, hers is continuing to grow. So now at age 70, they would collectively have $47.62 a month, or $13.62 more than they would have otherwise had if they started at 66. Because remember, he had 2,400, she had 1,000. So we had 3,400 together. We're now at 47.62. So this is where, so one of them cannot do both, but they can absolutely do it together. So, and this, again, this depends on ages. In this example, we're using two people that are the same age. Most couples aren't the same age, but, you know, the strategies can still.
After they do that, can they change their mind?
You have 12 months to change your mind one time. One time. So.
This is exactly what I've been planning to do. But when both of us reach 70, then each collects his or her own full retirement benefit. There's no household maximum there. They just
Correct.
They still collect the full, just as if they were single and have that earnings record.
Yep. Yep. You're both collecting that maximum.
I
I had a couple here recently. They were 67 and 8, I believe it was.
Right.
And they said, we're just going to wait. We're both working. We're going to wait till we're 70 years old, get the maximum benefit.
Right.
And basically, we showed them this strategy. So it's almost like getting free money.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't take it, the government's just going to keep it. They're not going to give it to you. So. Uh-oh. Hold on. Okay, I thought we were going to lose the computer there. So, now this is an important question, and this is probably one of the big ones that rolls through everyone's mind is, should I start collecting my Social Security benefit first and keep my savings growing, or delay my Social Security benefit and rely on my savings? There's a lot of things that play into that question. You know, first of all, do we have savings? If the answer is yes, now we got to make that decision. But also we need to think about life expectancy. You know, I've had a lot of people say, well, you know, I was just not too long ago diagnosed with diabetes, and I'm not going to make it to 80, 85, you know. So there's a lot of things you've got to start to put into that equation and take a look at that. You know, when we look at some of those longer strategies, that makes a ton of sense if you're going to live into your 80s. If you're going to live to be 70 years old, it might not make sense. So, you know, unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to know, you know, when that's gonna be, but, that's a definite important thing there. What kind of questions do you guys have? Yes, sir.
Is this all pretty easy to do online? When you file for Social Security to suspend and delay and restricted and so forth?
Not to really understand that, no. And the Social Security people are not designed to say, let me show you how to maximize your benefit. They are there, if you go in and say, this is what I want to do, they will help you do that. But they're not there to help you, you know, figure out how to, you know, what the best way to maximize.
Well, what I mean
it
is, I'm gonna retire next May from full-time work.
Mhm.
So can I go in and file and suspend online, or do I need to go into the Social Security office to do that?
Most people go into the office and do that, yeah. So yeah, but keep in mind, when you go in there to talk to them about these different strategies, they will absolutely verify, yes, you can do this. What they're not gonna do is say, this is the best way to do it based on your, you know, they don't have any ability to calculate that for you, so.
In those examples that you had a few screens back, after the 12 months where it's too late to make any changes,
Uh-huh.
what if one of the members of the couple dies? How does that mess this plan up, or does it?
Well, you pick up the greater of the two benefits. Just a second, if I can get back to them, I apologize. So, if we look at, I went one too far. There we go. If we look at this situation here, she's at 1,400, he's at 3,362. And then, boom, the next day, one of them passes. They're keeping the 3,362. Doesn't matter who passes. That's what they're keeping. So, absolutely, if there is a shortened life expectancy on one person, and we don't know, I mean, we could have an accident, but
But doing this wouldn't impact on what they would have gotten anyway if one died. It's not gonna hurt them.
only in terms of you may have delayed and not taking, you know, if you knew you were going to pass at 70, you should file at 62. I mean, depending on if you're working. I mean, I'm generalizing that a little bit, but you'd file as early as you could if you knew that, you know. But if you're healthy and there's no good reason to believe, you probably are going to want to look at one of these strategies.
Is there a way of maximizing Social Security income if you're single? You've done that with a couple.
If there's divorced or widow, certainly there is. If just single, it really gets more into the early versus late comparison. Then you start to line up assets against that and say which one, you know. Because keep in mind, you go past 66, that's an 8% jump. You know, can you put your assets somewhere and guarantee they go up 8% every year? That's pretty good.
So can you talk about the divorce situation, or does that vary a great deal?
There are a lot of factors into that. You have to be married. And one of the things I want to be very clear on, there are so many rules and regulations. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I can get them for you. But I believe you have to be married just over 10 years. The other party, so it'll depend on ages, the other party would have to file. Once they file, then you can have access to spousal benefits. So, but there's a lot that can play into that. So.
That you should wait till you're 66?
Yes, they would file at their age 66, and then you would, you know.
And I wait till I'm 66.
Yep. Typically, you could file early in a situation like that, but yeah, you would typically want to wait till you're 66 because there's such a reduction in that situation.
And then when I turn, so I can draw off of his when I'm 66, and then when I'm 70.
Flip to your own. Mm-hmm.
But is there something like, because I keep hearing, well, if yours is more than 50% of his, then there's no point.
might not make sense, but keep in mind, it could, because when we looked at the example right before this, John's was the greater one. He did a restricted and caught 500 off of James. So it kind of, it depends on how you want to put the whole package together on that. So, yes.
Oh, I was wondering, how much can a person earn if they take early retirement, earn without it taken away from the Social Security?
I think
and
it's
taxes?
15,400 or 5. So it's 15,000 and some change.
Okay, if you take early retirement.
Right. If you're going to take it at 62, and you cross, well, before full retirement age, anytime before full
Okay.
retirement age, I think it's 15, it's 4 or 5.
What's the question?
If you, before full retirement age, file for your benefit, you're still working, how much can you earn before it starts impacting that benefit? And it's every $2, I believe it's every $2 over, it's 15,400 or 5, somewhere right in that range, reduces your benefit by $1. So,
So my wife, she's going to file for spousal benefits when she reaches 66. She will continue working until she's 70, but she has a part-time job. I don't think she earns more than that. Right?
well, it wouldn't matter because she's full retirement age.
Oh, she is, right.
Yeah, once she's 66, or she hits her full retirement age,
Right.
assuming that's it, then yeah, she's fine. It's just if you take it early. Yep. The, one of the things I will say, please fill these out. Let us know what you like, didn't like, any other topics, that sort of thing.